Okay, so for my reading lesson plan, I did things a little bit different so they relate to the content area that I focus on in my classroom. So if you're not aware, I'm a math teacher, so I kind of did my lesson plan using reading in the math class. Okay, so it's maybe a little different than some of yours. Just wanted to make sure that I'm doing stuff that I'm going to use in my own personal classroom. So again, I did it for my integrated 9, so there's 24 students. For this lesson, I did over a 2-day lesson plan. We were talking about word problems. Here you can see these are my standards: model and solve real-world math problems using algebraic and graphical representations. Okay, analyze and solve linear equations, apply operations to solve, using reasoning to solve equations, and justify. Represent, solve, interpret equations, inequalities, and the systems of equations and inequalities, algebraic and graphically. So my performance objectives were, when given 5 word problems, students will be able to write algebraic equations by reading word problems with no more than 2 errors. Students will be able to read and comprehend the meaning of word problems by translating them into algebraic equations with no more than 2 errors. Students will be able to read, then graphically represent one word problem without any errors. Given 6 word problems, students will be able to solve the algebraic equation that they have written with no more than 1 error. So for my lesson, I will need some materials. So one would be a math problem detective task card activity. So they're just a bunch of task cards with word problems on that I can place around the room or in groups, so it's something that it's easily differentiatable. Highlighters, so students can use them to highlight keywords and word problems. Poster board and flip chart paper if you have it. Markers, post-its, a list of 50 words. Word problems, a list of 50 word problems. The projector, a please do now, which is going to include 5 scenarios, a box of dress-up materials and props, and of course the ticket out the door. Okay, so some prerequisite content that my students will need to know is, again, the symbols that represent addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Students will need to understand that variables are used to represent unknowns in algebra. Students will also need to know how to simplify expressions using order of operations. So quick overview of what the lesson's going to do. So students will work together to read and translate word problems into algebraic equations or expressions. Students will work with a partner to read and translate word problems. Students will explain their problem, their equation, and their graph to the class. Students will read and translate word problems into algebraic equations, then graph their equation. Students will work together to solve the algebraic equation they have created. So, implementation. So on day 1, okay, to begin the lesson, again, like I said, it's over a 2-day. So the intro is going to be about 45 minutes. I chose to do story and reenactment. I feel like that my freshmen will probably really like this activity. Since I teach a lot of arts and humanities kids, I think they would really enjoy this. So I figured I'd maybe think about one day using it, maybe next semester when I go ahead and redo this content in my class. So for this, students will be broken into 6 groups of 4. Each group will be giving a scenario, which is actually a word problem, that they must act out or create to the class. Students will work together to discuss the meaning and key concepts of the scenario. Students will be given 30 minutes to practice and reenact before presenting to the class. So after we've done that, introduce the letter and get students excited about word problems and how we can go ahead and use them and make a good time out of them, we're going to do some guided reading. So this will be the second half of the class. Students will be broken into groups based on their reading levels. Again, I have access to I can get access to the students' WIDA scores, so I can know what their reading levels are. Each group will get 5 math problems, 5 math detective task cards. Students will read the first word problem and then discuss it within the group within the group's key concept of the problems. Students will then reread the problem. As they are rereading, they will highlight the key concepts there that are necessary to write the algebraic equation. Students will then work together to translate the meaning of the word problem to create the algebraic equation. Students will then work together to solve it, and then solve the equation that they created and find a solution to the word problem. And that they will repeat for each of the 5 problems, and that should take about 45 minutes. Breaking the kids up by their reading level will allow me to differentiate the word problems I give them. It can allow me to maybe be more cautious with some of the word problems I use, and maybe make sure I don't have any of those cultural references that some of my students may not know. For day 2, the first thing we're going to do is a read, pair, share. So students will be placed with a partner. Each group will choose a random word problem that they will create. Sorry about that. We have a lot of teachers absent today. So to start day 2, we're going to do a read, pair, share. So students will be placed with a partner that I've chosen. Each group will choose a random word problem that they will write, solve, and graphically represent. Students will read and reread the word problem as they did the day before. They will discuss the who, what, where, when, and how necessary to understand the problem. Students will then discuss and use components to create an equation that represents the problem and then solve it. After they solved it, they will represent their word problem by creating a graph from their equation that they've used. After they've compiled everything, the students will work together to create a poster or the flip chart paper and present the word problem to their classmates. On their poster, students will have their problem, their equation, their graph, and the solution. After all students have completed their poster, students will participate in a gallery walk. There we go. So the students as they participate in the gallery walk, they will provide feedback or questions on a post-it and place it on each group members. I've done gallery walks before in some of my other classes. Students really like it. They like that their peers give them feedback, both positive and negative. I do it with many of my things, so I feel like it works quite well, even among the ELL students. So to finish my lesson, it'll take about 10 minutes. Students will complete the following word problems. To complete the word problem, students must read, comprehend its meaning, and translate it into an algebraic equation. So the problem is there. So it's talking about John and his 3 friends going out for some pizza and drinks. So accommodations and differentiation. Sorry. Amazing things that keep happening. So adjusting questions. So since problem sets in the activity can be manipulated to adjust to the needs of all students, this allows all students to practice the material being taught at their own level, but still reaching the goal of the lesson. So I can provide the students with word problems that have language levels at different levels for them. I can also provide students with, for lower level ELL students, possibly if I need to, providing them word problems that are in their native language. Flexible grouping, students will be grouped together based on students' reading scores. Again, this allowed me to provide and adjust questions as they're working together in groups to meet the needs of all individuals. Manipulatives, a list of operation terms will be provided in correspondence of their operation. So this is just a reference material that students can use to help them recognize keywords for our addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division operations. So my formative assessment would be, as students work together in partners, I will walk around the room and observe the students reading and discussing word problems. I will also be able to observe students comprehending the meaning of the word problem as they are translating it into an algebraic equation. Students will create a poster for the gallery walk. Students will show that they can read, comprehend, translate, and write algebraic equations by reading algebraic word problems. Finally, I close most of my lessons with a ticket out the door. This is a quick check for me to understand whether my students understand it or whether or not I need to go back and reteach it. So this provides me with individual data on each student on how well they comprehended the goals for the lesson. So my summative assessment, students will be given a quiz at the after the lesson to determine the understanding of being able to write algebraic equations by reading a word problem, comprehending and translating its meaning, and solving the problem for a solution. So that's my lesson. Like I said, I tried to do lessons that I could actually use in my classroom. So for this one, word problems, word problems is probably a big area for my school district. We are working to increase the number of ELLs that we do have pass our Keystones exams. And since a lot of the Keystone is reading, I'm hoping using some of these activities will help us increase those numbers passing.